I was staring at my computer screen when my boss walked into my office at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday and said, "Marcus, we need to talk." 23 years of engineering experience taught me that nothing good ever starts with those words. My name is Marcus Richardson, I'm 52 years old, and I thought I had job security. You know how it is, you put in your time, do good work, keep your head down. I'd been at Defense Tech Solutions since I started there in early 2001, right after getting discharged from the Marines in late 2000. Started as a junior engineer, worked my way up to lead systems engineer, making $180,000 a year. Not glamorous, but steady. Good benefits. The kind of job that lets you put 2 kids through college and maybe retire with some dignity. That Tuesday, I had just delivered the final breakthrough on something that would change everything. Project Sentinel, a next-generation radar system that could detect stealth aircraft from 300 miles out. 21 months of 60-hour weeks, countless nights away from Sarah and the kids, all leading to this moment. I'd filed the patent application 4 weeks earlier, right after we proved the technology worked. My name was on it, along with the company's. "Marcus," CEO David Sterling said as he closed my office door. Sterling was one of those guys who inherited his position. His father built the company from nothing, but David got his MBA from Wharton and thought that made him smarter than everyone else. "I'm going to cut right to the chase. We're restructuring the engineering department." I knew what that meant. I'd seen it happen to other guys my age. Younger engineers cost less. They work longer hours without complaining about missing their kids' soccer games. They don't have expensive health insurance premiums. "I want you to know this isn't about your performance," Sterling continued. "You've done excellent work on Sentinel, really excellent. But we need to reduce overhead, and unfortunately your position is being eliminated." I just sat there. What do you say to that? I'd given this company the best years of my career. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, family vacations, I'd worked weekends and holidays. And now, 1 week after delivering the biggest breakthrough in the company's history, they were showing me the door. "We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package," Sterling said, sliding a folder across my desk. 6 months' salary, that's $90,000. Continuation of health benefits, and of course, a strong recommendation letter. I opened the folder. The severance agreement was standard stuff, except for one clause that caught my attention. There it was, buried in the legal language. The company was claiming exclusive rights to all intellectual property I'd developed during my employment, including any patents filed or pending. That's when it hit me. Sterling wasn't just firing me, he was stealing Sentinel. See, here's something most people don't understand about patent law. The guy whose name is on the application, that's me, has certain rights even when he's working for a company. Those rights can be complicated, especially when the patent hasn't been approved yet and the employment relationship gets terminated. I'd learned a thing or two about intellectual property during my time in the Marines, worked on some classified projects that required security clearances and legal training. The military teaches you to read the fine print, to understand exactly what you're signing. "I'll need some time to review this," I told Sterling. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But we'll need an answer by Friday. 3 days. He was giving me 3 days to sign away the most important work of my career. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Sarah, going through the severance documents. She's an accountant, so she understands contracts better than most people. "This doesn't seem right," she said, pointing to the intellectual property clause. "You developed this technology. Your name is on the patent application." "Company policy," I said. "Anything I create on company time belongs to them, but you were fired. Doesn't that change things?" I'd been wondering the same thing. The next morning I called Jake Morrison, a buddy from my Marine unit who'd gone to law school after his service. Jake specializes in intellectual property law now, works for a firm in D.C. "Marcus, good to hear from you. How's civilian life treating you?" I explained the situation. Jake listened without interrupting, the way he used to when we were planning missions overseas. "Here's the thing," Jake said when I finished. "The patent is still pending, right? Not approved yet?" "Right. Filed 4 weeks ago. And they terminated your employment before the patent was granted?" "Yeah." There was a long pause. "Marcus, I think you might have options here. Can you send me copies of your employment contract and the patent application?" I spent the weekend gathering documents: employment contract, patent application, performance reviews, project timelines. Jake reviewed everything and called me Monday morning. This is interesting, he said. Your employment contract has a standard intellectual property clause, but there's an exception for inventions developed using personal time and resources. Did you work on Sentinel at home? I thought about all those late nights in my garage sketching initial design concepts 3 months before the official project even launched, running calculations on my personal computer. Yeah, a lot of it. And did you use any company equipment or resources for that homework? No. I was careful about that, used my own computer, my own software licenses. Marcus, I think we need to talk in person. Can you come to DC? The drive to Washington gave me time to think. 23 years at Defense Tech, and what did I have to show for it? A pink slip and a severance package that felt more like hush money. Jake's office was in one of those glass towers near K Street. He looked older than I remembered, but then again, so did I. Military guys age differently than civilians. We carry the weight of things we've seen and done. Here's what I think happened, Jake said, spreading my documents across his conference table. Sterling saw the value of your patent and decided he didn't want to pay you what you're worth, so he fired you, thinking you'd sign the severance agreement and walk away. Can he do that? Maybe, but maybe not. The fact that you developed significant portions of Sentinel on your own time, using your own resources, creates some gray areas. And the timing of your termination, right after the patent filing, that could be seen as bad faith. Jake leaned back in his chair. Here's what I'm thinking. What if we challenge their claim to the patent? What if we argue that you're the rightful owner of this technology? They'll fight it. They've got corporate lawyers' deep pockets. They do. But they also have something to lose. A $2.3 billion patent, according to the preliminary valuation I found in your documents. $2.3 billion. I'd known Sentinel was valuable, but seeing that number in black and white was something else. Even if we win, it could take years in court, I said. Not necessarily. Sometimes the threat of a fight is enough, especially when the other side has more to lose than you do. Over the next week, Jake and his team prepared what he called a pre-litigation notice. Basically, a formal letter explaining our position and what we intended to do about it. The letter went to Sterling's office on a Wednesday. His response came faster than I expected. Sterling called me personally Thursday afternoon. Marcus, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we moved too quickly with your termination. What would you say to coming back? We could work something out. Too little, too late. I don't think that's going to work, David. Look, I know you're upset, but let's be reasonable here. You worked for us when you developed this technology. The company invested in your research, provided facilities, paid your salary. We have legitimate claims here. Maybe, maybe not. What do you want, Marcus? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I wanted recognition for my work. I wanted fairness. I wanted these corporate guys to understand that you can't just throw away good people when it's convenient. But mostly, I wanted them to pay for what they'd done. I want what's mine, I told Sterling. The next 2 weeks were tense. Lawyers talking to lawyers, documents flying back and forth. Sterling made several offers: reinstatement, promotion, profit sharing on Sentinel. Each offer was better than the last, which told me Jake was right about the strength of our position. Meanwhile, I was getting calls from other companies. Word had gotten out in the defense contractor community about Sentinel and about my situation. Apparently, getting fired for developing breakthrough technology makes you pretty attractive to the competition. One call stood out. Northrop Grumman's chief technology officer, a guy named Tom Campbell, who I'd met at industry conferences. Marcus, I've been following your situation. Northrop has been working on similar technology, but nothing as advanced as what you've developed. We'd be very interested in talking to you. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into another corporate situation, Tom. I'm not talking about employment. I'm talking about licensing. If you own that patent, and our lawyers think you might, we'd be interested in licensing the technology. What kind of licensing? Full commercial license, exclusive rights for military applications. We're talking about breakthrough radar technology, Marcus. Our initial offer would be $2.2 billion, paid over 5 years. I almost dropped the phone. $2.2 billion. Not over a career, not as part of some profit-sharing deal, but as a direct payment for my work. That's a serious offer, Tom. It's serious technology. And frankly, we'd rather see it in the hands of someone who understands its value than watch Defense Tech mismanage it. That weekend, Sarah and I talked it through. The kids were home from college. Mike was finishing his senior year at Virginia Tech, studying engineering like his old man. Lisa was a sophomore at Georgetown, majoring in business. Dad, you've got to do what's right for you, Mike said. You've been loyal to that company for my entire life. What did loyalty get you? Lisa, ever practical like her mother, focused on the numbers. $2.2 billion. Dad, that's generational wealth. That's college paid for, house paid off, retirement secured. That's freedom. Monday morning, I called Sterling one last time. David, I've thought about your offers. I appreciate them, but I'm going to decline. Marcus, be reasonable. You're throwing away a good career over hurt feelings. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about doing what's right. What's right? You developed that technology on company time using company resources. We own it. We'll see about that. I hung up and called Jake. Let's move forward with the patent challenge. You sure about this, Marcus? Once we file, there's no going back. I'm sure. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Jake filed our challenge to Defense Tech's patent claim on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Sterling's lawyers were calling for settlement discussions. Turns out, when you're facing a $2.2 billion patent dispute, you suddenly become very interested in avoiding court. The settlement negotiations were tense. Defense Tech's position was simple. They owned everything I'd developed during my employment. Our position was equally simple. Significant portions of Sentinel were developed on my own time, using my own resources, which gave me rights to the technology. The breakthrough came when Jake's team discovered something in Defense Tech's own project records. The initial design concepts for Sentinel were time-stamped from my personal computer, dated 3 months before the official project launch. They'd been uploaded to the company's servers later, but the metadata showed they originated from my home office. That was the smoking gun. Defense Tech couldn't claim ownership of technology that existed before they even knew about it. Sterling's lawyers knew they were in trouble. The settlement offer came Friday afternoon. Defense Tech would release all claims to the Sentinel patent in exchange for my agreement not to pursue damages for wrongful termination. I had my answer by Monday morning. Yes, I'd take the deal. Tuesday afternoon, 21 days after Sterling walked into my office and fired me, I was signing licensing agreements with Northrop Grumman, $2.2 billion, paid over 5 years. The first payment, $440 million, was wired to my account Thursday morning. I called Sterling to let him know the deal was done. Congratulations, Marcus. I hope you're happy. I am, actually. Thanks for asking. You know this means Defense Tech loses the military contracts for Sentinel technology? I know. That's jobs, Marcus. Good people are going to lose their jobs because of this. That stung a little, but not much. Good people lose their jobs all the time, David. You taught me that. The funny thing is, I don't feel angry anymore. I felt angry for those 21 days, sure. Angry at being fired, angry at being undervalued, angry at watching corporate executives try to steal my life's work. But now I feel something else. Vindicated, maybe. Satisfied. Definitely. Sarah and I paid off the house. Set up college funds for the grandkids we don't have yet. Made sure Mike and Lisa will never have student loans to worry about. I started my own consulting firm, working with small defense contractors who can't afford their own research and development teams. It's good work, meaningful work, and I get to set my own schedule. Sometimes I run into former Defense Tech colleagues at industry events. They're always curious about what happened, how I ended up with the patent. I tell them the truth. I did the work, I deserved the credit, and I wasn't willing to walk away from what was mine. Most of them nod and say they understand. A few ask if I'm hiring. David Sterling stepped down as CEO 6 months after our settlement. The board cited strategic differences and leadership challenges. Defense Tech stock dropped 40% when news of the Sentinel licensing deal became public. They're still in business, still doing good work, but they're smaller now, more careful about how they treat their engineers. That's probably a good thing. The defense industry is small and word travels fast. Other companies started reaching out, not just for licensing deals, but for advice on how to treat their senior engineers. Turns out, when someone wins a $2.2 billion patent dispute, people pay attention to how they got there. I got invited to speak at engineering conferences, not about radar technology, but about intellectual property, rights, and fair treatment of technical talent. The message was simple: respect your engineers, recognize their contributions, and don't assume they'll just walk away when you betray them. One presentation stood out. It was at the National Defense Industrial Association conference in Washington. The audience was full of CEOs and CTOs from major defense contractors. I could see them shifting uncomfortably in their seats as I told my story. During the Q&A, a young engineer from Lockheed Martin asked, "What advice would you give to engineers who think their companies are taking advantage of them?" "Document everything," I said. "Keep records of your work, especially anything you do on your own time. Understand your employment contract, particularly the intellectual property clauses, and don't be afraid to get legal advice if something doesn't feel right." An older CEO from Raytheon raised his hand. "Mr. Richardson, don't you think your actions were vindictive? You could have worked things out with defense tech." "I tried to work things out," I replied. "For 23 years, I worked things out. I put in the hours, did the work, delivered results. When they decided I wasn't worth keeping around, they made their choice. I just made mine." The applause was interesting. The engineers clapped loudly. The executives, not so much. After the presentation, Tom Campbell from Northrop found me in the hallway. "Great talk, Marcus. How's the consulting business going?" "Better than expected. Turns out there are a lot of small companies with big ideas but limited resources. Any regrets about not taking a traditional job with us?" I thought about it. No regrets. I spent too many years working for someone else's vision. Now I get to work on projects I believe in, with people who value what I bring to the table. Fair enough. If you ever change your mind, we'd love to have you on our team. "Thanks, Tom, but I think I'm done being anyone's employee." Walking out of that conference, I realized something had changed. Not just my bank account, though. That was nice. My perspective had shifted. For 23 years, I'd defined myself by my job title, my employer, my place in the corporate hierarchy. Now I defined myself by my work, my skills, my value as an individual. That shift in perspective made all the difference. I wasn't Marcus Richardson, former defense tech employee. I was Marcus Richardson, engineer and inventor. The guy who developed breakthrough radar technology, the guy who knew his worth and wasn't afraid to fight for it. The consulting firm grew faster than I expected. Word of mouth in the defense industry is powerful, and apparently, hiring the guy who beat defense tech in a patent dispute sends a message. Small contractors wanted that kind of technical expertise and backbone on their side. Within a year, I had 6 engineers working with me. All of them were older, experienced guys who'd been pushed out of larger companies for various reasons: age, salary, corporate politics, the usual suspects. We called ourselves Richardson Defense Solutions, and we specialized in advanced radar and sensor technologies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Defense tech had fired me to save money, and I'd ended up competing with them using the very expertise they'd thrown away. Mike graduated from Virginia Tech and joined a satellite communications company in California. Lisa finished at Georgetown and took a job with a consulting firm in New York. Both of them were debt-free, thanks to the Northrop deal. Both of them understood the lesson I'd learned the hard way: know your value, document your work, and never let anyone steal your contributions. Sarah retired from her accounting firm earlier than planned. With our financial situation secure, she could finally pursue the art degree she'd always wanted. She enrolled at the local community college and started painting again, something she hadn't done since before the kids were born. "You know what the best part of this whole thing is?" she said one evening as we sat on our back deck watching the sunset. "The money?" "No." "Well, yes, the money's nice, but the best part is seeing you happy again. You haven't been truly happy at work in years." She was right. I'd been going through the motions at Defense Tech, collecting my paycheck, counting down the years until retirement. Now I was excited about work again. Excited about the projects, the challenges, the possibility of creating something new. The second annual payment from Northrop came through right on schedule. $460 million, just like clockwork. Jake called to congratulate me and ask if I was ready to invest in his law firm's expansion. "I'm good, Jake, but thanks for everything you did." "Hell, Marcus, I should be thanking you. That case made my reputation in IP law. I've got more work than I can handle now." The third year brought unexpected news. Defense Tech was being acquired by a European defense contractor. Sterling was long gone, and the new management team was struggling with the loss of the Sentinel technology and the competitive disadvantage it created. The acquisition price was roughly $800 million, less than half of what Sentinel alone was worth. I didn't feel vindicated by their struggles. If anything, I felt sorry for the engineers who were still there, the good people who'd been caught up in Sterling's poor decisions. A few of them reached out to me about opportunities with Richardson Defense Solutions. I hired 3 of them. Good engineers, solid people who deserved better than they'd gotten. Year 4 brought a call I wasn't expecting. The Pentagon wanted to discuss a new project, next-generation missile defense systems that would build on the Sentinel technology. The contract was worth $500 million over 3 years. "We've been impressed with your work, Mr. Richardson," the program manager said during our meeting. "Your reputation in the industry is outstanding, and frankly, we need someone who understands the technology as well as you do." "I'm honored, but my company is still relatively small. This is a big project. We're not just offering it to you, we want you to lead a consortium of smaller contractors. Think of it as an alternative to the traditional big prime contractor model. It was a chance to do something different, to prove that innovation didn't have to come from massive corporate bureaucracies. Richardson Defense Solutions would be the lead contractor, working with a network of smaller, more agile companies. Last week, Mike graduated from Virginia Tech with his engineering degree. During his speech at the family dinner, he said something that stuck with me. "Dad, you taught me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it." I think about that Tuesday afternoon sometimes, when Sterling walked into my office and changed my life. If he'd handled things differently, if he'd recognized my contribution, offered me a fair deal, treated me with the respect I'd earned, things might have turned out very differently. But he didn't. He chose greed over fairness, corporate politics over loyalty. So I nodded, said thank you, and walked away. 21 days later, I was $460 million richer, and Defense Tech was facing the consequences of underestimating a 52-year-old Marine engineer who knew the value of his work. 5 years later, I'm running a successful consulting firm, leading Pentagon contracts, and proving that experience and expertise matter more than corporate titles. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just success. Defense Tech taught me that loyalty to a company means nothing if the company doesn't value you. But loyalty to your craft, to your skills, to your own worth, that's everything. I'm 57 now, still working, still innovating, still proving that the best engineers get better with age. And every morning when I walk into my own office in my own company working on projects I believe in, I remember that Tuesday afternoon when David Sterling thought he was ending my career. He was actually setting me free.